are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again to a very special live edition of LinkedIn Live in the Weeds with Jimmy Young. Every Wednesday afternoon at 4:21, we like to find people out there in the cannabis universe who are willing to talk about the industry and discuss some of the issues that are facing this industry every single day. Remember, In the Weeds is just one of the many podcasts that Pro Cannabis Media produces on a weekly basis, and we ask you to like, share, and subscribe to our content. Right now, we're going to be talking with Justin Chaddick. He's the CEO of Treepost, and he's out of Atlanta, Georgia. Justin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Jimmy.
Tell us about what Treepost is.
Sure. So Treepost is a marketplace, online marketplace for craft CBD products. So when we saw how many brands were coming online after the 2018 Farm Bill, now it's about 3,000 plus brands. I've lost count. We saw a real need to curate the amount of brands that were out there, make it easier for customers to make a selection, really increase the transparency behind what's in a product, and make it a little bit more convenient for people to purchase those products. I saw people spending hours trying to figure out what brand should I trust, what kind of product should I try using. And so what we're really trying to do is just make that a lot more simple. You go onto our site, we curate the brands, we vet them, we make sure that it's the highest quality product possible. And then when you're ready to make a purchase, that is going to come straight from the brand directly to you. And so we're just trying to simplify the whole process to make it easier for people to access the very high quality stuff that is on the market now.
And I've been to your website and I've seen a variety of products on there. Most of them are full spectrum CBD products, correct?
So we do have a lot of full spectrum products on there. One of our goals is to really match the right product to the person. So we have full spectrum, broad spectrum, and isolate products. And there's a lot of debate, on which one's the best for you, but we recognize that people are coming to our site with a health journey behind them and in front of them. And so we try to respect really the decision that those people are making and not make it for them, or really push them in a certain direction in regards to what type of product they should use. We see our goal is really just making sure that we're curating for quality. So whatever product that's on there, whether it's full spectrum, broad spectrum, or an isolate product, we want it to be as high quality as possible. So every product on there is going to have a COA and a certificate of analysis for those who haven't heard the term. And in addition to having that information, we try to make it easier to read as well. So we use icons so that you can actually see this has been tested for microbial contamination, heavy metals, et cetera. And in the future, we also want to bring terpenes really to the surface because that's emerging as a really important aspect of the medicinal and functional benefits of these products. So we really just want to create that transparency and curate the quality. We try to have a complete product mix. So no matter what you're looking for, there is that type of product for you. But our main goal is quality curation.
Right. You mentioned the Farm Bill passing in 2018, and I make fun of the Senate Minority Leader, the senator from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell, because he does kind of look like Yertle the Turtle. You know what I'm saying?
And I can't say anything bad about Mitch McConnell, man. He's the one who got the hemp over the line.
And yet he had no idea what he was doing when he did that. You cannot tell me that he was helping out his Kentucky tobacco farmers. I'm sure that's what generated his interest in this and got him politically to move forward with this. But to pass a bill like this without FDA, any kind of regulations, and here we are 3-4 years later, still waiting for those regulations for people in this industry, to me is inexcusable.
Yeah, it's interesting, the legislation that's passed. I certainly don't know what was going on in Mitch McConnell's head, but the way that it's unfolded has been very interesting. Not really doing the same thing as cannabis. There's very high emphasis on state by state laws that makes it very confusing to navigate these laws because some places have age restrictions on certain types of products. Some people allow smokables. I think North Carolina tried to ban smokable flower for for the state consumption, but not for export. So it's just a whole mess. And the courts are really deciding, you know, what's going to fly. And so we've been working those things out piece by piece. But part of what we're trying to do is, you know, also help simplify that regulatory gap, not doing the regulation ourselves, but recognizing that in the absence of regulation, who's going to make sure the quality is high? And so when you have as many brands as there are operating in the space right now, there's tons of great ones, and we're really trying to find as many as possible. So anyone who has a recommendation, we're always looking for new great brands to get on to our marketplace. But at the same time, there's the other end of the spectrum. There's the fly-by-night actors. There's the people that, you know, just want to make a quick buck. They don't care where their ingredients are coming from. You know, they could be coming from anywhere around the world. They're not tested for purity, and not having regulation really opens up a lot of risk to consumers who aren't going to really vet the product for quality.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to say that, you know, you're looking for regulations, and yet the one regulation that the FDA loves to crack down on the CBD industry is you can't make any claims about the health benefits of this cannabidiol, this CBD that's out there. And that, you know, they've shut down some CBD companies that have made claims that are basically saying, hey, this is the anti-inflammatory component of the cannabis plant. It will not get you intoxicated, but it can knock down the inflammation in your body. That's a no-no, according to the feds. Am I right?
That's exactly right. The FTC has been sending a lot of warning letters out, and exactly for what you're talking about. It is a little bit ironic that rather than regulating the quality claims, they're focusing on, regulating the quality of the production. They're focusing on the claims. I mean, you know, the claims rules are there for a reason, and I think that they certainly have their place in keeping customers safe. But it is a little ironic that the focus is on the claims rather than the quality production. I'll take your point there for sure.
There's so many inconsistencies at the federal level, not just for the cannabis plant that has THC in it, the component, the cannabinoid that actually gets you intoxicated. And I use that word intoxicated because I'll never forget John Dvorak, who's a local hemp master in the Massachusetts area, reprimanding me during an interview when I said, well, CBD doesn't have a psychoactive component to it. He goes, no, it does have a psychoactive component. It doesn't have an intoxicating component. And I continue to learn. I learned my lesson, and I continue to share that with those in this space, because there are psychoactive components that CBD does interact with, but from a positive basis, as opposed to where intoxication might be viewed as a negative basis just because of the effect it has on the human.
Yeah, it's a super interesting point, and I'll tread into areas where I'm in danger of getting over my skis on on the neurology or the lexicon here. But I think it is really interesting to draw that distinction between intoxication and psychoactive, because you know, there's a lot of things when we think of psychoactive, you know, we think of, you know, magic mushrooms or psychedelics, something that's really going to give you a crazy experience. But if I eat too big of a lunch, you know, it has a psychoactive effect. I'm going to feel a little bit different. Yeah, exactly. And there's no
food coma, right? A food coma.
Food
right?
coma, exactly. Yeah. And so in the same way, you know, I think that we're realizing something that you know, many herbalists have known for a long time, that medicines that come from aromatherapy, so like terpenes and these different herbal compounds, you know, they can have a real effect on your body. It's not necessarily additive. It could be something that equalizes or even removes other feelings. And so if it's removing something that was in your mind, I would consider that psychoactive. Or if it helps balance something, you know, in your mind or your psyche, I would consider that psychoactive too. We generally at Treepost don't like talking too much about psychoactive versus not, because of the danger of confusion. And we really want to be a source of truth, and to the best of our knowledge, what we can say for certain and clarify rather than add to the noise. But that is a tricky one. And I always tell people personally when they're like, well, what does CBD do? I'm like, well, if you've tried THC, it adds something. There's something that wasn't there before. I've found personally that CBD is just a great leveling out tool for me. So if I've got, a lot going on my mind, it kind of helps bring it back down. And I think, with what we're learning about the endocannabinoid system, using that analogy as kind of a balancing agent is actually playing out in the research pretty well in the way that it interacts with the endocannabinoid system and kind of takes overactive activity and on the neurological level down. So that's as far as I'll get into speculating on neuroscience, but it is.
No, that's good. That was good. That was good. And it's an issue, and it's a challenge for anybody that enters into this space. How do people, if I'm a craft grower of hemp, how do people get their product reviewed by Treepost before you allow them to come into your onto your site?
Sure. Yeah. So it's, right now, honestly, finding new sellers to come onto our site, that happens in a lot of different ways. And that's why, I'm happy to have recommendations, because we have the same problem that consumers have, in that with thousands of brands out there, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of people that want to sell on Treepost and that we have to turn away just because they don't meet the criteria, or they're not really up to the standards that we would want to represent on our site. So to get on Treepost, right now, we're a very small team. We're a startup. And so somebody from our core team is actually going to have an interview with the leaders of that business, because we want to not only know about your products, but we want to know about your business practices. And, honestly, we want to know that your head and your heart are in this game for the right reasons. So, if you're only worried about making money, that's a really big, red flag for us, because this is medicine for a lot of people. And so if you can at least speak to something about why it's important to have high quality products, what your standards are that go beyond just meeting minimum requirements, that's something that we really look for. In terms of just like checking the boxes, all of the supply chain for the hemp ingredients has to be based in the US. We have to be able to audit your supply chain, make sure that there's, full visibility and transparency. There has to be a batch test for every product available on our site. So if you are doing multiple batches, we need to see your name on that certificate of analysis. We're adding certifications too, so that certifications. So like, for instance, if you say you're USDA organic, and that's the one that we support right now, we'll actually go and check the USDA organic database and make sure that that's true. Because if you go on Amazon, people are just slapping that logo all over everything, but it means something. And we want to maintain the integrity of those certifications. So we'll be adding more certifications over time, so that, when people come onto the site, they can see like, this actually has this certification. These are the tests for this product. And so anyway, to get back to your original question, we go through an interview process with each brand where we're checking their backstory. We're making sure their products are up to our standards. And then we also want to make sure that their customer service is really good and that they really put the customer first. As a marketplace, we want the brand to have a direct interaction with the customer. So we're basically facilitating that transaction, but it's ultimately the brand that's packing the product, sending the product to the customer. And so we want to make sure that they're doing the best job possible every time.
Yeah. And another one of those inconsistencies in the federal government is that they're not willing to give it a stamp of approval until more research is done. And yet they try to slow down the research process or the granting of research grants to study CBD. So it's like it is a catch-22. It's totally out there. And again, I love putting the finger at the federal government, because nobody likes big government when you get right down to it. And we're all part of a human experiment right now with the damn pandemic. We're all taking part of that for the most part, but with cannabis and CBD, we definitely have to put this on the back burner as much as possible, because we know. What do you know? You don't know they don't know anything, because they're not allowing you to look at it, right? And they're certainly not going to listen to the anecdotal evidence that is continuing to pile up about people who've tried a CBD based topical, and all of a sudden the ache or the pain in their elbow or their shoulder has gone away, right? It's gone away. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that works. Why wouldn't you? Oh, that's not going to impact public safety in any way if I use a topical product on my body that eases some of the pain I have from a workout or from a sport, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point, I think it's great that we have a review process for drugs, therapeutics, and supplements. But to your point, we've unfortunately missed out on 50 years of research that we could have had already on these cannabinoid based medicines. And we really should have, the discoveries that were originally being made 50 plus years ago should have been enough to deschedule the drug, especially just for researching the therapeutic benefits of it that are all coming to light now. And if you listen to a lot of researchers in the cannabinoid space, they'll, often lament this. They're like, unfortunately, we're decades behind where we could be. And all these classes of drugs that could have been developed. And it's hard to really, I don't like to be, attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence. And it's hard, but it is hard to wonder, what is the real reason why this type of drug has faced this level of prejudice for this long.
And you don't think it's big pharma paying lobbyists in the government at all, do you?
I mean, big pharma is certainly part of it. I think also there's unfortunately, there's the cultural element too, that people have associated cannabis with the undesirable, whatever the version of that is for who's keeping it from reaching the public, the undesirable parts of society. And I think that there's, a lot of prejudice, a lot of racism in that story. And so it's great to see that we're finally starting to acknowledge that. We're finally starting to realize that, healing is more than just letting this class of medicinal compounds reach the public. It's also, got huge community benefits, and it can really be something in a toolkit that goes beyond just, a different, pharmaceutical.
And I guess we can point the finger at Tricky Dick Nixon. I know as a kid growing up in the protest area, I was not a big fan of his, let's just say. Okay. And he's the one who created the Controlled Substances Act and made sure that this cannabis product was put on the Schedule I status that it still has to this day. And at this point, we would all in the cannabis industry love to see a descheduling of that of cannabis, the plant, because this is the time to do it. There is momentum. There is enough anecdotal evidence that it is time to give it the respect that it had for thousands of years as a medicine. And we're finally coming to grips with that reality that reefer madness was contrived propaganda. And every time the government would do some kind of a study on cannabis and it kept coming back with positive results, the medical community, you know what, there's really not much on this that we really have to worry about. All those reports happened for decades and decades and decades until Tricky Dick came along with the Controlled Substances Act and put that scheduling in place. And it's definitely time. It's time to change. That is what I believe. I think people in the industry feel the same way. And I'm guessing that you wouldn't have started this company if you didn't see a more positive future and more acceptance by society of this plant. Am I right?
You're totally right. There's Nixon, there's Reagan in the war on drugs, and we're finally, how many decades later, waking up to the reality that those were failures, significant failures. And I am excited about the future. I think we're at a tipping point. It's a really exciting time in the industry, but I think also people underestimate how important and how big this movement is for cannabinoid-based medicines and recreation. You know, I think medicine is a great thing to talk about, but you know, we're at this moment where it's no longer prohibition, you know, and if you see how ubiquitous alcohol became, I mean, there's a drink, you know, for every occasion. We could go to brunch and have mimosas, you know, there's a we could have a beer at the football game. I think that as a category, this has the potential to, you know, create a total societal shift. And I'm not saying that everybody's going to be super stoned all the time, but, you know, when coffee, for instance, became a popular drink, people stopped drinking so much alcohol and had a source of clean water. And so just in the way that caffeine was opening up minds, I think that cannabis and cannabinoid-based products could really make a profound and interesting change in our recreation as well as our medicine.
Right.
So, you know, we're in a point where 60% plus of, you know, Americans favor recreational legalization, and I don't think that we can turn back from here. So it's very exciting.
Right. But it's going to take time because, as we all both know, nothing happens fast in Washington, D.C. Okay.
That's
absolutely
true.
Nothing. Okay. We do hope that there's some movement in the descheduling or some kind of federal reform over the next few months. We keep hearing things that something's going to happen in the spring before the midterm elections. So stay tuned to Pro Cannabis Media for all those things, because Lord knows we'll be talking about them on a daily, if not weekly basis. Justin Chaddick, it's treepost.io, correct?
That's correct. It's treepost.io.
Can I ask a question? Why the IO? Was there any reason or?
.com was taken.
Good reason.
We also, we're at Shop Treepost on Instagram and same on Twitter. If you Google Treepost, will be the first thing that comes up. So when in doubt, just use the Google. And yeah, you know, we're constantly putting out new content, and like you, there's a big gap in education and clarity. And so it's great that you're helping educate people about this industry and what the developments are. I'm excited to see what happens on the federal level. If we could get the Safe Banking Act or something like that through, that'd be a huge win. Just, you know, wake up from this unfortunate period of, you know, criminalization and start enabling people to really let this industry take off.
Right. And give those who have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs an opportunity to get into this business as entrepreneurs. And that is slowly happening, but it is a very, very challenging process to many in that space. So Justin Chaddick from treepost.io, I so appreciate you taking some time out in the middle of your day and joining us to talk a little bit more about this. We look forward to hearing more about Treepost and their growth over the next few years. So for Justin Chaddick and the entire PCM production team, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. and we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.